Hello everyone, this is Jennifer. So in this video we're going to talk about the Consumer Protection Act 1986. So Consumer Protection Act basically deals in protecting the rights of the consumers from and uh, ensure that they're not exploited by the unfair trade practices from the side of the producers or from the side of the sellers. So this act basically deals with the protection of consumers against the exploitation of the unfair trade practices of the producers and sellers. Like, what kind of practices are we talking about? Is the pricing high prices for the consumers to buy the products, or not giving them variety of choices, or just giving them low quality products or low quantity products. So just safeguarding the consumers for all this exploitation, this act came into existence. So in fact, providing proper protection of the fundamental rights and interests of the consumers, freeing them from the exploitation, or creating consumer awareness, or consumer providing the right to clean business environment to the consumers by means of legal amendments, is all that protection means from this act. So it basically protecting everything, whatever interest and rights of the consumers are concerned with. So there are important definitions under this act. The first one is the consumer. So what do you mean by a consumer? So consumer is a person who pays a price for the goods he or she buys. So any buyer can be termed as a consumer. For example, if you go to a shop, you buy something from the shop, you become a consumer, and the person who's selling it becomes a seller. So a buyer is nothing but a consumer. Or a consumer is a person who pays for the service he or she hires. So a hire of services is a consumer. So for example, I hire a person to do some services in the home. So the hirer of services is known as the consumer of the transactions. So we're moving on to the next definition, which is service. So according to section 2 subsection 1 subsection I of CPA, Consumer Protection Act 1986, defines a service as service of any description which is made available to the potential users and includes the provisions of facilities in connection with banking, financing, insurance, transport, processing, supply of electrical or other energy, boarding or lodging, or both, housing, construction, entertainment, amusement, or the purveying of news or other information. So service can mean different kinds of facilities provided in connection with all kinds of service industry, so according to the act. So the third important definition we're going to look into is the goods. So what does goods mean according to section 2 subsection 7 of the Sale of Goods Act 1930? So it just means every kind of movable other than actionable claims and monies, and includes stocks and shares, growing crops, grass, and this attached to or forming part of the land which are agreed to be severed before sale or under the contract of sale. So basically uh, the goods mean anything which is movable, which are basically involved in a transaction or a contract of sale according to the Sale of Goods Act 1930. The next important definition is restrictive trade practices, which is under section 2 subsection 1 clause double N. Restrictive trade practices as per clause double N means any trade practices which requires a consumer to buy, hire, or avail of any good, or the case may be services as a condition precedent for buying, hiring, or availing of other goods or services. So it's basically a kind of condition which requires a consumer to fulfill in order to buy or avail the goods or services. The next is defect. Defect, according to section 2 subsection 1 clause F, defect means any fault, imperfection or shortcoming in the quality, quantity, potency, purity or standard which is required to be maintained by or under any law for the time being in force or under any contract express or implied, or as is claimed by the trader in any manner whatsoever in relation to any goods. So basically, it is the shortcoming in the quality of a product. When do we say there's a defect in the product? Okay, so for example, you buy a book and you see that the quality of the book is not good. Okay, the pages of the book is not correct or the pages are torn, so there is a defect in the particular product. So that is what is called, basically it is the imperfection or shortcoming in the quality or quantity of the product. The next definition that we are going to look into is deficiency. So according to section 2 subsection 1 clause G, deficiency also is the same like defect. In case of goods, deficiency is relevant in case of services. So basically, defect is in case of a good, deficiency is in case of a services. So what do you mean by deficiency in the uh, in the view of services? So it can mean any fault, imperfection, shortcoming, or inadequacy in the quality, nature, and manner of performance which is required to be maintained by or under any law for the time being in force, or has been undertaken to be performed by a person in pursuance of a contract or otherwise in relation to any services. So defect in goods, we talk about the quality of the product, whereas deficiency in services talks about the way the service is rendered. Okay, we call someone to repair a TV. Okay, at that time the person how he is performing his particular service. Okay, if he is not performing this particular service, or we go to a hospital. Okay, we go to a hospital to get cured. So the performance is based on the level of treatment take conducted by the doctor to the patient, or the treatment taken ahead by the patients, whether he gets cured or not. So it depends on the quality of the doctor or the performance of the quality of the doctor. So that is what is deficiency. Deficiency is basically connected to your services. So next we move on to unfair trade practices. Unfair trade practices, according to the section 2 subsection 1 clause R, it is a it is defined to mean a trade practice which for the purpose of promoting the sales, use or supply of any goods or for the provision of any service adopts any unfair trade method or unfair deceptive practice, including any one of the following practices, may be like bargaining, false misleading representation, offering of gifts, price and considering contents or lotteries, or non-compliance of product safety standards, hoarding or destruction of product goods. So basically unfair trade practice is nothing but in order to promote your sales, your producer or sellers distract the mind of the customers. For example, in advertisement, for Fair and Lovely advertisement, if you see, what do people immediately tell you? You become white, you become fair when you start using this particular product. Okay, so which is completely misleading the concept of the consumers. They start buying it, the sales start increasing, but will everybody become fair or will everybody become white? That's a question mark. Okay, these are unfair trade practices which are basically done in order to improve your sales. Next we move on to the next definition, which is compliant. So this unfair trade practices may be consulted before filing a these are the acts which will be conducted before filing a complaint for unfair trade practices. Moving on to complaint, it means any of the following or having made a complaint. So basically, any person who makes a complaint is known as a complainant. So it can be a consumer, it can be a voluntary consumer association registered under the Companies Act or under any other law, or the central government or the state government, or various persons. The next is complaint. So it is an allegation in writing made by a complainant. So it can be for any unfair trade practices which is conducted, or excess in price, etc., or hazardous product, or the goods or services are not to the sufficient level. Anything when a written complaint is done by a consumer, it is known as a complaint. So moving on to our next slide, which is talking about the objectives of Consumer Protection Act. So the objectives of Consumer Protection Act. The first one is right to protect against hazardous goods. So consumer has a right to be protected against marketing of such hazardous goods which are to health, life or property. So these are basically injurious to body and health, and which can harm to the body and health besides causing loss of money. The second one is right to access variety of goods and at competitive prices. So under this act, consumer can choose any from among the variety of goods and services available in the market. So one finds in the market goods of different brand, quality, shape, color, size, design and price produced by different manufacturers. Under this right, the consumer must be assured access to variety of goods and services at competitive prices as far as possible. Next is right to consumer information. Consumer has a right to get all the necessary information in order to decide on buying the goods or services. So what all kinds of information are we talking about? Is a quality, quantity, purity, potency, standard, price of goods, etc. And mainly talking about the contents which are used in producing the goods. So the next right is right to due attention at appropriate forum. So consumer has a right to present before the appropriate forum or authorities all those matter which affect his interest. So basically, in order to protect his interest, he may protest or file complaints. Next one is right to seek redressal against exploitation. So consumer has a right to get his claims and complaints settled against the manufacturers and sellers. Okay, so he can be compensated, and he can have it. Basically, it helps him in secure compensation or to protect his right against the unfair trade practices or exploitation by the trader or the producer or the seller. Right to consumer education. So under this right, consumer is entitled to get information or education about those things which are necessary for him. Like what are we talking about? We're talking about how he can protect his right, how he can go ahead complaining. So this basically helps the consumer protect himself against fraudulent, deceptive and misleading advertisement services. The next one is services or negligent services also. So the next one is right to healthy environment. So as in the right to physical environment that will enhance the quality of life, it includes protection against environmental dangers over which the individual has no control. It basically acknowledges the need to protect and improve the environment for present and the future generations. So the next topic we're going to look into is a consumer complaint. So it basically, in this slide, we're going to talk about on which all a consumer can complain against the manufacturer or seller. So the first point is unfair trade practices. So it means a trade practice or business practice, which for the purpose of promoting the sale, They may adopt unfair method or deceptive or unfair deceptives. Like what are we talking about? So like in the course of supply of goods or usage of goods, or in order to promote your sale. So like telling the consumers the standard quantity, quality, grade, composition, or style or model in a false statement, just not providing the correct quantity, quality of the product, or falsely suggesting any rebuilt, second hand, renovated, reconditioned, or old goods product, or falsely suggesting that the service of particular standard of the product, or representing that the seller or the supplier has a sponsorship or approval which he does not have, or making a false representation of the product, or giving a warranty or guarantee about the performance which is not adequate or which does not get into a proper test, etc. So, second complaint that the consumer can do on a seller or producer is defective goods, based on defective goods. So, the definition of defective is already been told, that depends basically reveals as a standard quantity or quality of the goods must be in correspondence with the claims made by the trader. If it is not there, then there's a defect in the particular product. So in relation to those goods which has any fault or imperfection in the quality, at that time the complaint may be filed in respect of the goods which suffer from one or more defects. Point number 3, deficient services. So, complaint against deficient services. So, the complaint can be made in respect of any services which suffer from deficiency in any aspect. Okay, like fault or imperfection or shortcoming or inadequacy in the manner of performance of a particular services. So at that time also complaint can be done. Fourth one is false bargained prices. So when an advertisement is published in a newspaper or otherwise, whereby goods or services are offered at a bargain price, wherein the fact there is no intention that the same may be offered at that price for a reasonable period or for a reasonable quantity, a complaint can be filed against the trader. Next is non-compliance of the prescribed standards. So any sale or supply of goods for use by consumers knowing or having reason to believe that the goods do not comply with the standards prescribed, so at the time also the complaint can be made. The next one is we're going to talk about procedure of filing a complaint. The first one is notice will be sent to the opposite party, that is to the seller or the producer. Then prepare the consumer complaint in the required format. So then get the complaint affidavit notarized through a notary, that is through just get that seal and signature through a notary club. Next is submit the complaint form and the court fee by the consumer, okay, to the receiving clerk in the consumer court, who will basically give the date of admission, hearing and complaint reference number to the consumer. The next one is on admission hearing, case fitness is decided. So on admission hearing, consumer would be informed whether his case is fit for acceptance or not. If accepted, he'll be given the date for next hearing. For example, at sometimes silly reasons also the consumer may take it. So at time it will not be taken into consideration by the court. So only if it's a valid case, it will be taken into consideration. Okay, the next point is the court will send a notice and complaint copy to the opposite party seeking reply within 30 days. So they will send a warning kind of copy to the opposite producer or the seller, and for a 30 days period, so in order to them to come back. Then when a complaint alleges a so the next one is the forum send it to the laboratory to find out whether there is any defect or not. So if there are any defect in the goods to be determined without proper analysis, the forum or commission will basically send it to the laboratory to check whatever the consumer is telling is right or not. The next is the hearings will continue till the matter is decided. Then the complaint should be decided within 90 days. Moving on to our next topic, which is consumer redressal agencies. So consumer redressal agency. So what do you mean by this? So the word redressal means the remedy. Redressal means a remedy for the loss suffered by the consumers. So these forums are known as the courts, which award the compensation to the consumer if there are any loss. So it can also give compensation to the producer or sellers depending on the situation. So the court redressal agency is basically of three tiers, which is the district forum, state commission, and the national commission. So the district forum is basically at a district level in order to entertain the consumer complaints wherein the value of goods or services and compensation does not exceed 20 lakhs. Okay. And at the state level, there is a state commission to deal with the complaints wherein the claim exceeds rupees 20 lakhs but does not exceed 1 crore. So at a national level, it's a higher level. So it takes into complaints all that exceeds beyond 1 crore. So we'll look into each forum. So first we'll start with district forum. So at the district level, each district of the state shall have a consumer dispute redressal forum, which is known as the district forum. So who heads this district forum? It is head by the district judge. Okay, each district forum is to be established by the state government by the notification to be published in official gazette. Okay, in some cases, one district forum for district may be too inadequate to deal with the complaints of the consumers of metropolitan cities or large cities. To overcome this difficulty, the Consumer Protection Amendment Act has incorporated a provision under clause of section 9 of the act, according to which the state government may, if it deems fit, establish more than one district forum in the state. So what is the composition of it? Who all does form a part of this district forum? So a person who is or who is qualified to be a district judge will be the president. Then there will be two members who shall be the persons of ability, integrity, and standing, one of whom shall be the woman. Okay, the third is every appointment shall be made by the state government on the recommendation of the selection committee, consisting of the following. So the president of the state commission is known as the chairman. Then the secretary, who is the law of the department of the state, who is a member. Okay, then there is a secretary who is in charge of the department dealing with the consumer affairs in the state. So what is the term and age of this particular services? So the member shall be eligible for reappointment for another term of 5 years or up to the age of 65, whichever is earlier. And what about the jurisdiction? So subject to other provisions of the act, the district forum shall have jurisdiction to entertain complaints wherein the value of the goods or services and the compensation, if any, claimed will not exceed more than 20 lakhs. So the district forum is basically for cases which are below 20 lakhs. So moving on to the state commission. So state commission will be headed by the high court judge. Okay. And what is the compensation of the state commission? A person who is or who has been the judge of a high court appointed by the state government shall be its president. Okay. So there will be other two members who is the persons of ability and integrity. One of them will be women. So it basically consists of the president of the state commission, who is the high court judge, then the secretary, who is the law of the department of the state member, and a secretary in charge who is for the department dealing with the consumer affairs. Okay, what is the terms and age? 5 or up to the age of 67 years, whichever is eligible. earlier, and they will not be eligible for reappointment. And what about the jurisdiction? So it basically considers the value of the goods or services and the compensation which does not exceed 12 lakhs and which is below 1 crore. Okay, it appeals against the orders of the district forum within the state, and it also calls for the records and pass appropriate in any case of consumer dispute which is pending before or has been desired by district forum within the state, where it appears to the state government that such district forum has exercised a jurisdiction which is not vested by the law. Next, we are moving on to the National Commission. So basically, in this, the composition, the person who is or who has been the judge of the Supreme Court shall be appointed by the central government. He shall be the president, provided no other appointment will be made, and there will be 4 other members, including one woman who is for the purpose of ability, integrity, and experience. So, a person who is a judge will be nominated by the Chief Justice as the chairman. There will be Secretary Department of Legal Affairs, and there will be also be Secretary of the Department dealing with consumer affairs. What is the term? 5 years or 70 years, whichever is earlier. And what is the jurisdiction? It is beyond 1 crore. So it basically entertains the value of the goods or services or compensation which is beyond 1 crore. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.